Well, it's the dark side of human nature. We are shocked by murder cases, but also really fascinated by what drives people to commit these crimes. Our next guest got a close-up look at some infamous offenders. He's a forensic psychiatrist who sat in Queensland's mental health court, and he's with us on the panel now. Donald Grant, welcome to Studio 10. There's no shortage of crime fiction, and it is something that I love, true crime. What is it, do you think, that drives this fascination with the most macabre?
Well, it's certainly popular. Everyone loves a crime, a murder particularly.
But why?
And because I think we are aware inside of our own potential to become aggressive and potentially violent and even to be a murderer under certain circumstances. It's an unconscious fear and fantasy quite often. But it's somewhere we're aware of that, and so I think reading about it at arm's length and seeing crimes solved and seeing the murderers locked up helps to reassure us that we're okay too. That our killer instinct's under control.
Oh, wow. You actually interviewed the woman responsible for a shocking Brisbane murder in the late 80s, the lesbian vampire killer.
Yes, I did.
It's a great tabloid headline, isn't it?
Well, that was the Courier Mail, I think. Yes.
Good News Corp newspaper. Tracy Wigginton had multiple personalities driving her towards this?
Well, she claimed that at the trial. She claimed, and her lawyers put forward that as a defence, and they said that she had multiple personalities, and that one of the personalities had done the murder, whereas another one, who didn't want her to do that murder, put her bank key card in the shoe of the victim. So that when the police searched the scene, they found Tracy Wigginton's key card, and it wasn't difficult to solve the crime then.
Just take us back to the story, because didn't she and her girlfriend lured a man to a park, is that right?
Yes. She was with a group of 3 other friends, and they were drinking in the valley at Brisbane, and Tracy was really pretending to be a vampire. And she was talking to them about her need to feed, meaning she needed to drink some blood. And she persuaded them all to go out and find a victim. And they went across the river and picked up this poor man who was a bit drunk, having went to the Irish club, and got him into the car and persuaded him that he would be having a sexual liaison with Tracy down by the river. And so they went down there, and that's where it happened.
So they just wanted to kill him? They wanted to kill for the thrill?
Yes. Well, Tracy did in particular. The other girls thought that she was a vampire, that she had to suck on the blood, so they sort of went along with it.
They believed that?
They believed that at the time. Tracy took the man down on her own, and then after she'd done the killing, which was very violent, she came back to the car, and the 3 other girls were kind of sitting there thinking, and as she got in the car, they were sure they could smell blood on her breath, so they were convinced she was a vampire. And
so did the multiple personality defence fly?
No, it didn't. And that was the important thing about this case, was that when it came to trial, multiple personality was really ruled out as a valid defence, and so she didn't get a defence under that. She was seen as someone who actually had a great deal of built-up rage, was in a very difficult situation in her personal life, and that she killed this man, random man off the street, to vent her rage from all the things that happened to her in her life in the past.
So when you spoke to her, did you think she was mad or bad?
She wasn't mad. She didn't have any major mental illness. She had a tendency to dissociate, and that's one of the features of multiple personality that made people think she might have it. She could blank out, repress emotions, push them into the unconscious, not remember things that she'd done. She'd be violent at times and not remember what she'd done, and so on. So she had that kind of problem, but she had a great deal of rage, and she had a personality disorder.
Where is the sort of line between, I guess, mad and bad? Because, I mean, a lot of people would say, well, if you are capable of doing something like this, and then, of course, capable of blanking it out and pretending that it wasn't you, or that, or not feeling affected by it, that on its own is it the very definition of madness, that a sane person couldn't possibly do that, but not necessarily.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, it's often thought that if you do something like that, you have to be mad, you have to be sick.
Makes us feel better if you sort of put it in that.
But actually, not that many murderers are mentally ill, and not that many get a psychiatric defence.
But if she's out now, which I think she is
yes,
she? So is she likely to do it again?
No.
Why?
She served 22 years in prison. Her personality characteristics have settled down and matured over the years in prison. And murder doesn't often recur. It's unlikely it's going to recur unless you are a sadistic serial killer.
Right.
Who's likely to
occasionally
kill
it
you?
does.
Somebody you know or a complete stranger?
Well, there's an old saying that friends, family, kith and kin are most likely to do you in. And, and so these old sayings...
Catchy.
Old sayings like killer instinct and this sort of saying really show us that we understand some of these things, and family or people you know are most likely to attack you or to murder you. So intra-family, intrafamilial, or between friends and relationships, jealous murders and so on.
Right.
So sleep with your one eye open. Now, you also looked into the case of the enraged murderer.
Yes.
Where a seemingly ordinary guy, he flew off the handle and he killed his first wife, but then he went on to kill his second wife as well.
He
How
did. About
that
a decade later, he killed a second wife.
Just in a violent
So that was
rage?
one where it came back, where it happened again, and it was very similar circumstances. He was a very vulnerable man who had a very bad upbringing. His parents were both alcoholic, abusive. He went off the rails and ended up in prison when he was young. And then his first wife kind of rescued him. She was a nurse who liked to look after people, and he saw something in her that he could be looked after by her, and so he got his act together and went on with life pretty well until his back went and he became depressed, dependent on painkillers, and then when she said that she was going to leave him after he'd overdosed a number of times and driven her mad, he felt this intense rage.
That he was being abandoned
picked up a knife
again.
and stabbed her. He was being abandoned again, as he had been in the past, and that was too much for him to deal with.
How often do you... I was going to just... sorry, just on that. How often do you find that violent people and killers have had a violent upbringing themselves or seen violence, been subjected to it, have been victims and then perpetrators? And how often is it just something that just is
Comes out of
inside them?
nowhere.
Yeah.
Comes out of nowhere.
Well, it's common for people who have problems with temper and so on to have family background where they've seen violent models, they've been abused and violently assaulted perhaps by their parents, they've seen their parents fighting, they've experienced all that, and then as adolescents and young people often involved in violent behaviour, so that they then might be the ones that are pretty vulnerable to getting involved in a violent relationship and with maybe domestic violence and then a rage murder at some stage, possibly.
When we hear of murders that I suppose are just done in extremely out there ways, if you know what I mean, do you think that there is any influence from the media, from watching fictional movies, from watching violent movies? Do you feel that any of that can influence, A, someone to murder, and B, the way they commit a murder?
I think there's possibly. The research about that is sort of mixed. Some people say that if you spend hours watching violent things and shooting people, that might contribute, or it might give you, it might actually give you an outlet. The interesting thing about Tracy was that in the days leading up to this, she and her friend were watching over and over again a video where a man's head was exploded and killed, and they used to go out to the cemetery and have weird meetings at night and so on. So there's there was in her, there was that influence from the violence that she'd experienced and then was watching it on television. But I think the average, more well-adjusted person can watch those things without going off the rails.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Donald's book is called Killer Instinct. It's out now. If you are a true crime fan, it is definitely worth a read. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Don. That's great.
All righty.